Next up, though, we've got the first of our panels. We've got quite a few panels today, which is great. It means we get to hear even more voices. And the first of these panels is called Futureworld. Where will interactive entertainment be in 20 years' time? I mean, it's perfect for future visions. That's kind of the point, isn't it? So yeah, we've got Zsuzsa coming, who is going to be chairing this panel. So welcome.
Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great, doing great. How
Good,
about
good.
yourself?
I'm not bad, thank you. Not bad. The weather's nice here, so it's keeps the energy up as well, which is always nice when there's a bit of sun blasting through the windows. So that's nice at the moment. Yeah. How about you? Is the weather nice where you are?
Yes, it is. It's a little early, so we're not sure what kind of weather we're gonna get here in LA. It's a little gloomy at the moment. So yeah, but hopefully the sun will come out later today.
Well, fingers crossed. Although my experience of LA is it's definitely going to be better than here. So very jealous.
I didn't want to
Uh,
say.
Now, normally I would obviously introduce everyone else, but I wouldn't like to take that away from you. So I'm going to allow you to do the introductions, introduce everyone, and I will drift off into the background. I know we've lost John. We are looking to get him back, so John will appear when they appear. But in the meantime, I want to remind everyone, please use the Q&A function, and either myself or Zsuzsa will go through the questions at the end of the panel. So for now, though, I will drift off into the background and over to you.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you so much, and thank you all the organizers for putting this great panel together. I'm so excited to have everybody here, and we found John. Perfect. There he is. All right, and isn't it an amazing coincidence that we are just tuning into this first panel right at the back of an NFT presentation, which is certainly part of these future trends that we're going to be talking about today. So let's actually, Sophia said that I'm going to do the introductions for you guys, but I have a way better idea. I think you're going to do the introductions for yourselves, because you're going to do a way better job at that than myself. But I just wanted to give like kind of a little preamble before we get started today, and welcome everybody in the audience as well. We have a very fun topic today. I really love talking about this stuff because with kind of like the games industry, I'm not sure how many of you have seen the data are coming out recently, having this record-breaking year in 2020. I think it was something like north of $170 billion globally that gaming has made, kind of eclipsing any other entertainment medium, as well as, of course, this constant buzz around NFTs, the metaverse, and all the other trends that are going on right now. Many of us are wondering, where will interactive entertainment be in the future, right? How is the landscape going to look like in a couple of decades? And well, that's what the panel is going to be about today. So I'm super excited about this lineup. We have some people with very diverse backgrounds in this space. So I can't wait to touch on all your different expertise, and kind of like take our little proverbial crystal ball and peer into this future together. So, but before we kick off, let's do a quick round of introductions. I'm going to start just quickly with myself. So my name is Zsuzsa James. I'm the Trade Commissioner for Video Games and Esports with the Consulate General of Finland in Los Angeles. So I support Finnish teams and Finnish companies with their market entry efforts into the US, and happy to talk with any US companies who are interested in the Finnish games or esports markets. And then with that, I'm going to kick it off to Kuo, who is right here under me. So let's start with you.
All right, thank you, everyone. I am Kuo. I am based in Seattle, originally from Taiwan. I'm a pop culture consultant, so I work in the area of gaming, anime, manga, comics, and collectibles. So thank you for having me. I'll kick it off to Houston.
Wow, I wish I could be a pop culture consultant. That sounds like a great job. That's fantastic. My name is Houston Howard. Super happy to be here. I am the founder and chief storyteller at a company called 13 Creative. I focus on transmedia multi-platform strategy for IP, and so I'm sort of the odd duck that works in games and comics and music and film and television, and figuring out how to glue it all together for some broader holistic experience for the audience.
Awesome. Very cool.
So let me pass it off to somebody. Is it like a
sure,
game?
go
I pick one.
Who started the trend? So I was like, why not? Let's do this. Sure.
I like it. Let's do Lewis.
Hi, it's Louis, and I'm Louis Savy. I'm a 20-year film festival organizer. I run SCI-FI London, and I've been doing that for it's our 21st year this year. I do some film production, and I've just started dipping my toes into gaming world. We've got the license to produce the John Carter Warlord of Mars video game, which we're doing for PC and console. So this is a huge learning curve for me, if nothing else, and it's great to be amongst all these experts and all this talent. It's been really interesting. Hopefully I can bring something to the party. Who knows? If not, I'm going to learn a lot.
Definitely. All right, Luis, do you want to Louis, sorry.
Oh yeah,
do you want to kick it off to somebody?
And I need to hand this off to Alexey. Which way is it? Pass the baton that way, or
actually on the
That
top
way.
from my point of view. So hello, it's very great to join your panel. I'm Alexey. I'm running studio here in Kiev called Beatshapers. We do mainly console games, and we are one of the studios who pioneered streaming interactions, which is kind of base of many companies right now. So we into this space, and the past few years we've been very active in VR. So I believe there's a lot of intersections in terms of entertainment. So yeah, this is very interesting area for us. So
awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, welcome.
So, John?
There you go. Give it to me, Alexey. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you, Zsuzsa. Thanks for having me. I'm John Middleton. I'm the CEO of Nifty Games in the US. We're in San Francisco and LA and Chicago. And we are focused on free-to-play mobile sports games. My background, I've been in gaming for 25 years, really throughout the entire industry, from development to publishing. I've done in-game advertising and music, even down to merchandise and accessories. So yeah, really happy to be here, and thanks for having me. And I will, I'll turn it back to you for the grilling and the questioning and this, building a massive conversation of the future. I'm trying to figure out what's going on in 20 years.
Yeah, well, we're gonna learn all about it within the next half an hour, John. And this is it. This is where you all find out what happens in the next 20 years. Perfect time. But yes, welcome everybody. So great again, so great to have you all. And yeah, so as John said, I do have a lot of questions. And speaking of questions, before we get started, there was already a great reminder there in the chat, but I will do so again for those who are listening, to please put your questions in the Q&A. I will be picking them out, actually throughout the talk. If there's some that comes up that's relevant throughout the talk, I may fit them in between. But we're gonna have a dedicated Q&A towards the end as well. So make sure you put your questions in the Q&A box below. And then with that, I'm actually going to kick it up with Louis, because I wanted to talk a little bit about the intersection of the film industry and the gaming industry. You said you are kind of new to this space, and as somebody who's kind of coming into this new, it's very interesting to me what your perspective is on this, and kind of how do you see the games industry intersecting with film, and how do you foresee that affecting the film industry going forward? So Louis, what would you say are sort of the biggest, first of all, what is kind of your first impression? Because you mentioned that you're new to this space. So I want to start with that. And then I really want you to kind of talk a little bit about the biggest trends that you think are affecting the film industry right now. And how do you see it will look like in the next 20 years? And for 2 minutes. No, I'm kidding.
Good, right, okay.
Big, massive question for the first question.
The answer is yes.
Great.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff there. Obviously, that's I mean, first off, I think that gaming of film and entertainment, there's always going to be passive entertainment, and we're going to still love passive entertainment in the future. It's going to go on and on. We're going to want to watch sports. We're going to want to watch a tale and an episodic series and so on, and not be involved in it, and just let the story come into us. But I think what's been really interesting, and in terms of just answering very quickly on what the sort of big issues are certainly with film and gaming at the moment, is that the money's all in gaming and the money's not in film really at the moment. It's certainly because of the lockdown. Where the hell do you show your film unless you put it on TV? You know, whatever you call streaming services, ultimately you're still putting it on someone's laptop or on their TV at home. You know, we don't have the blockbuster movies at the cinemas at the moment, and they keep being pushed off and further away. So investment is very difficult in film currently, and I think people are looking at gaming because its home is naturally at home. I think what's really interesting is the virtual sets and virtual production, and how that world is starting to really open up now. It's a friend of mine, I think he's on a panel later tonight, has Dalal, who's done his first completely animated feature film in the Unreal Engine. You know, he's been using that in After Effects and done all of his mocap and captures and everything. He's going to put it all through Unreal, and it will look amazing. I mean, what I've seen of it, it will look amazing. It'll be fabulous. I think the intersection's going to come when you know, what we can do with sort of deep fakes and metahumans and that kind of development. I think it's going to be amazing that you'll be able to have some user generated content. You know, if I want to be in that movie, you know, another MCU title comes out, but it comes out as a game kind of ecosystem, you know, as part of the MCU, but it allows me to use my iPhone, mocap my face, throw myself through a really simple metahuman online you know, editor, and then drop myself into the premiere of that film when it gets sold to me via the Netflix MCU Unreal interactive engine premiere at home system. You know, so I can now go and be Black Widow if I want to. I mean, it's, you know, or I can go and be the Hulk and have my face being used for that. But what equally I think what would be interesting is whether or not there'll start being a really big bank of celebrities taking rights on their images and their voices and their acting and so on, and then having those available as banks in things like metahumans. So if you want to have George Clooney in your movie, you can just go to a store and buy him and put him in your film. Or equally at home, again, if I want a passive experience, but I want to have some gameplay as well, with a little bit of building, I can go in and get that next MCU film and think, do you know what? Why are they putting Chris Hemsworth in that role? He's going to be dreadful. Why don't we put in Ryan Reynolds? I prefer him. He'd be much better in that role. So then I can just go and switch out performances. You know, I can switch out the actor. I can do all that because the AIs and the being able to deal with the image and also some of the speech patterns and the way that performance work, I can see that coming, you know, not very far away. You know, someone's going to take that idea of having a full-on immersive experience, stick it into VR, stick it onto my TV screen, do whatever I want, but allow me to be in it or to choose my cast, choose not just my game, you know, not Flickerbook when picking. I go to page 29 now, you know, and go to page 35 now, and do I go left and open that door and all that sort of stuff. I mean, I think that's what's going to come.
That's fantastic, Louis. I love this. You've touched on about a dozen things that I want to talk about all at once, which is fantastic. So like my head was just buzzing with questions, but we're gonna get to those. I love the comments in the chat, Nick Offerman starring in everything. But yeah, that is the democratization of creation, with these tools, with these engines, the game engines that are now, like what we're talking about, metahumans is absolutely fantastic in how it really gives the hand it gives the power of creation into the hands of talent, and it's really making it much easier for talented up and coming filmmakers or game makers. And that's the thing, like, are these
they
roles
can
gonna just
monetize,
intersect and
but when that
make
can
them
be
monetizable?
monetized, when that can be
Exactly.
when they can see a clear route to monetizing that, to be able to sell me additional things within a store for the MCU, you know, like John said about having merchandise, you know, you can buy all this digital merchandise, but also digital characters and elements. And, you know, I want that Marvel fight now between Spidey and whoever else to happen in my street, because I can buy the 3D models and everything from Google and have that feel like it's going on outside. And then I can purchase the clip of the thing I've just watched and then sell that to my friend. You know, I mean, it's just the UGC part of it, I think, is really interesting. But I think that the industry, certainly between film and game, will really, really cotton on to be able to make sort of real cut and paste, and, you know, Lego entertainment will become Lego, you know.
And yes, and you touched on very importantly about monetization, and how that is, I think, something that the film industry is going to be able to take a page out of the book from gaming. And, you know, again, we just talked about some of those forms of monetization, but since you touched on a lot of things regarding IP and a lot of different media and how some of these IPs would cut across media, I wanted to use that as a segue to ask Houston, because so this kind of like dovetails really nicely into your domain, which is all about IP, right? And big stories, and how to you know, write these grand stories across these multiple platforms, which we have actually seen over the years, right? Like, we have seen a lot of crossovers now lately, some with actually more success than less. It used to be so that game IPs haven't really translated very well into film in particular, but now we've actually seen a couple of successful endeavors in that. So what is your take on this vision that Louis painted in terms of, you know, having an IP and just it being very transformative, really giving it into the hands of both the creators and the consumers? How do you see a successful brands like IP in the future? What would a brand have to think about when creating a big story and a big IP in the coming decades?
Yeah, I mean, this, I think, is the most interesting time to be a creator, because you're now faced with all these opportunities. I'm very bullish on the fact that this is the most opportunistic time to be a creator ever since the invention of the printing press. I think there's just a wild opportunity. A lot of people are freaking out, scared, and they don't know how to move forward. But for the people that can figure out how to move forward, I think there's a lot of neat things we can do. I think, you know, the successful entertainment brand moving forward has to think about holistic business models. We have to think about before, you know, things were very myopic into you know, I'm gonna create a game, I'm gonna create a film, and then I'm gonna license out things to other companies to be able to do the game or do the comic books. Now I think we have to be thinking in the creative development aspect of the IP. We've got to be thinking about these other things, and then we have to figure out, how do we pull these other extensions in such a way that it actually works together for a greater continuity. And I think, you know, as we've seen things with, you know, with the big Disney IPs of Star Wars and the MCU, and then, you know, but even beyond those, you know, iconic IPs, you see a craving for continuity. You see a craving just for the Lego blocks to sync up. I think that's the difference between Warner Brothers and Marvel with how they've treated their superhero brands, is one has continuity and one doesn't. And so I think, you know, what you're going to see is a tripling and quadrupling down on the creative development end on things that have great story worlds. And you know, that's a great story world is what will become the engine to fuel multi-platform IP. And that is a creative asset that that video games, I think, intrinsically have more than film and television, even more than some other types of media. Is that they've always just naturally had great story worlds, and now in a multi-platform setting, that story world is the thing that is the engine that drives all the story potential. I'm completely convinced that the revenue potential of a brand will ultimately be dialed back to how good of a story world do you have. When I say story world, I specifically mean, what's the we know the story of Black Panther, T'Challa vying for the throne against Killmonger, but that story world is Wakanda or even the greater MCU. Are you able to take your main character out of the story and still have something interesting? When you have that engine, that creative asset, that then is beyond just a single character or beyond just a single story. Now you have something special that can fuel all these opportunities. There's going to be passive opportunities. There's going to be active opportunities. There's going to be more interactive opportunities. Getting into the NFT space, as we just heard the previous presenter talking about. There's so much stuff, but ultimately it all comes back down to the creative idea. And if you don't have that good creative, none of these opportunities are fueled in a great way. And that creative asset, I think, that's going to drive it is just that big idea of what that world of the game or the film or the book, what that existed. But I think, in 20 years, you're not going to be able to say that's a video game IP, that's a movie IP, that's a comic book IP. I think everything is going to be sort of this weird amorphous just IP blob where you say that's a multi-platform IP, that's a successful IP because it extends. It doesn't have. I'm from Kentucky, so I'm from the country, and we always hear that phrase. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. And that's country wisdom, right? Now we're seeing that. Now I think the way forward is to take your eggs, put them in a lot of different baskets, and see how those baskets thrive moving forward.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's fantastic. And you touched on something interesting there, where Luis also mentioned about the kind of like the malleability of IP and the sort of the desire for the increased desire and almost the increased expectation of consumers to be able to kind of like play with these characters and put them in places where they want them to be.
Sure.
And so how do you just a quick follow-up on what you discussed. How do you see the concept of IP evolving in this sort of more democratized both creator and consumer space going ahead? Like, how will IP look like in the metaverse, right? How will IP rights evolve in the metaverse? Will publishers have to become more flexible when it comes to that and allowing sort of like players to take their precious IP and play with that? Or how do you see that evolving in the future?
Sure. Well, one, I think anybody who's in law school right now, if you're thinking about going into criminal defense, change and go into IP law, right? And so I think
you heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, that's it. So one, I think lawyers there's a lot of lawyers and a lot of litigation that's going to have to go. We are going to have to go through to figure all this stuff out. I mean, we just, there was an article in Variety yesterday that where Disney is qualifying streaming revenue as home video, so as to do some creative accounting because they're still working on these old contracts, and so there's so much stuff that has to be figured out about that. I think you just have to you have to anticipate this, and I think honestly, I don't think we're going to get to a point where we lose the role of an artist. I think there will always be the creators and the filmmakers and the storytellers that have the expertise in those areas that will continue to have the opportunity to tell stories that we just sit back and consume. I don't think it's going to be a complete cannibalization where we get rid of the artist and we want our own Lego blocks. I don't think it has to be either or. I think it has to be yes and. I think as humans we crave great storytellers to tell us great stories. But at the same time, we have to figure out how to carve out those opportunities for fans to do exactly what you're talking about. But we have to think about that before and actually build that into the IP, whether it's whether it's a creative idea, whether it's a part of the story world, whether it's an offshoot of a story. We need to see that holistically. And then when we launch the sandbox for fans to say, to jump in, we can say, jump in there, do what you want, reskin it, interact with it, do whatever you want with it. And this is how it actually interacts with the other more passive aspect of the IP, and they are actually linked together. It's not just an extra thing, and it's a meaningful extension. I think that's what we'll see. We're all aware how fan fiction interacts with IP, and so we've always allowed fans and encouraged, or at least people should encourage fans to be able to do that. I know J.K. Rowling is famous for like really hating fan fiction, but typically creators like for fans to engage. Ultimately, what we're seeing is just another iteration of fan fiction, but now we're going to see it in the form of more visual media rather than a short story you post on Wattpad. So I think it's going to be the same principle with just different toys, but I think it just needs, the creators have to be more mindful to give fans the sandbox to play in and make that sandbox a meaningful aspect of the IP, right? That could potentially interact with the more passive aspects of the IP. I think that could be interesting as well. But yeah, I think we're going to have to go through the next 10, 15, 20 years of litigation to really answer all the questions of how it's going to play out. I mean, that's tough to see, and but that's what courts are for. But I think the more mindful creators can be of incorporating the audience into the experience, the better off they'll be.
So the future of interactive entertainment is litigation.
Yeah, that's it. Basically, yeah.
The
I'm going to sue Houston right now. I'm just going to keep my job and just.
That's it.
Yeah, that was my idea. Yeah.
Class action.
Perfect. Okay, that's a great segue. Cool. I'm coming to you now for that and with that. So that's actually a great way to now follow up, because we've been talking a lot about, of course, digital goods. And I actually just saw recently, a couple of days ago, I think it was Anderson Horowitz investing I think some 8 million seed fund into the world's first digital fashion label for sneakers. I think it was something like Artifact. And as today's panel shows, we can't go a day without hearing about NFTs in the art world and or a blockchain-based game and all these digital goods. So Kuo, as somebody who kind of works predominantly with physical goods, like you discussed with books and comics and manga, you do work with anime as well, but you do work a lot with physical goods and physical products in this increasingly digital world. How do you see the future of collectibles looking like? What do you think the future holds for collectibles in your opinion?
Sure, thank you. There's a great quote that I heard, I'll paraphrase it, which is that people tend to overestimate the short-term revolution, but we underestimate the long-term impact, right? And I think if you take a look at what's happening with both NFT, but also blockchain overall, right now, nobody knows how to price it, right? So that's completely crazy. But I think that is obscuring the long-term impact since we're here talking about the future. I think the future is incredible in multiple ways. I think from a creator IP holder point of view, it's very powerful in terms of controlling ownership, keeping provenance. I think it's also very interesting from a creator IP holder and also rights holder point of view to kind of create new financial products. So it's not just about what are you selling today, but if you are a well-known developer, filmmaker, comics artist, sculptor, and you can potentially say, well, let's figure out what's the downstream effect revenue for the next 10 years of my catalog, right? And actually turn that into a financial product. I think from a collector and even retailer point of view, there's some really interesting aspect to this. Once again, you have this ownership question that you can say, I own this, and have various ways. I can see collectors in the future have a physical product, just like in the fine art world, have a physical product in a Freeport. And then they have the NFT that they can take out and read and play with. So you got your, and then I think lastly that I say, who said that? I think it was Houston that talked about the power of the story world. I completely agree. Go back to what I said at the very beginning. Right now, the pricing is out of whack, but that's okay. That's short term. That's going to flatten now and going to have a correction. Standard will be set at some point. Regulations are coming, lawsuits are coming. But once everything flatten out, I think is really, really interesting. Just the quality content will rise to the top. Mm-hmm. So it's not just some random scan of a tweet. It's going to be like the best scan of a tweet that's going to rise to the top. So.
Mm-hmm. Very, very interesting. Yeah, and I think a lot of the times, I guess what we see is that these age-old things that the tactile feeling of any having a collectible, I think potentially even will be even more important that we have those, as we have a lot of things vaporized, so to say, right? Like we have more and more of these goods move into the digital realm. Arguably that might actually make physical ones even more important or even more significant. Because of that sort of like scarcity. So that's very it's going to be very interesting to see how that interoperates, and then maybe touches on all of what you all have said so far, is that it's about thinking holistically. It's not either or, it's all of the above, but how, right? Like how do they operate together? I wanted to move to John, because we were talking about and I wanted to ask about sort of shifting gear a little bit now from traditional big IP and talking a little bit about another segment of interactive entertainment, and that's sports, right? So John here works with sports games, and traditional sports was one of the segments that we've seen last year that was kind of hard hit by COVID, right? There was a lot of events obviously canceled and all that. And what I think was quite fascinating for a lot of us working in this space, we've seen them moving into or trying to kind of like move into and take advantage of esports and the digital nature of video games, which was an interesting sort of like reversal of interest. So your company Nifty Games is partnered with the NFL and with the NBA to create these high quality sports games for mobile audiences. Can you talk us through a little bit your vision of the future of sports games in particular, because that's the area where you're in, and how they will kind of like fit into this landscape of traditional sports and esports, and where do you see kind of like you guys being and being in the future?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. It's interesting. I think we talked a lot about intellectual property and how it's going to be treated in the future. And these IPs are not just generated from games or film or TV. You get into some of the other stuff like sport or music, some things that have more connection to events and frankly more connection to reality, becomes a little bit of a different ballgame. I've worked a lot in the past with obviously throughout the comic world and with superheroes and different IPs, all the video game IPs. But sports IPs are the most unique in the sense that it's kind of I would say it's almost part of the human condition, sport. So it's really it was one of the more painful things of the COVID situation. Lockdown was the situation of not having sport going on field and people not being able to kind of cheer on their teams, and it just felt like a loss of life part of the situation. But as they went along, like you said, they used video games quite usefully to supplement that, and the NASCAR did it famously over here. It did some actual virtual races that were excellent, and the same thing with using background sound from Madden and NFL games and Premier League games from FIFA. So it's really interesting how the two worlds blend, and I think sports IP is a bit different because it's so evergreen and so cyclical, and it kind of renews itself on a seasonal basis, literally. As you go along, you look at the future of sports and games and what we're doing. I mean, we're obviously focused on mobile, and we like the idea that we're addressing this large kind of predisposed fan base that has this passion for the content, and it's just built in. If I always say, if you try to sell me a navy blue T-shirt, I'm a pass. But you put a Red Sox logo on it, and I'm buying every one of them. So it's it is the way it is. But as compared to other forms of content, sports separates itself a bit, and I think it's for us, it's that attachment, attachment to reality. I love the idea of particularly mobile, being able to have, whether it's geofencing or geolocation, exposure to the events that then affects the game in a more real-time manner. We can do lots of different things, even now today, that brings fans closer to the action and closer to the game, even within the video game. Obviously, we're focused on kind of clash style games, very quick. I would say like the Altoid of gaming, 5-minute, but competitions that are authentic, but it's on the go all the time. And I think that's going to be important for the future as well. I think you look at different types of technologies that are out there, and there's a lot of different ways you can engage fans, both at the event level. I think the idea of, I talked to somebody once about, in stadium, holographic replays and things like that, where, you can see different, if there's a great play, it instantaneously is played again on the field, and the types of fields that might be there in the future, and the types of pitch, where fans themselves have some agency over what's going on in the game itself. There's a lot of interesting things going on in sports in that direction. From the gaming side, I think like I said, the more connected you can get to what players on the field are doing and how it relates to what's going on in the game, the better. And then vice versa. If the game itself can relate to, it's halftime in this game, so we're going to do this, and you have this migration of audience, in the two-screen fashion right now, or live to screen. I think there's lots of different options that can be done as the world turns. But yeah, 20 years out, I would say it's going to be really interesting to see where sports are. If you look at the game doesn't change, but it advances. So.
Do you see more and more interaction between the athletes themselves and in games and getting them sort of like, I'm just thinking of some of the the trends recently that I've seen, athletes becoming streamers themselves, or how do you see the athletes themselves kind of like being more involved in
well, they're involved across the board, and you got to also remember the demographic of most athletes, right? They're young, they're generally speaking, they're engaged in gaming, and they're engaged in in interactive and online. The NBPA, the Players Association for the NBA, kind of famous 3 or 4 years ago, actually separated out from the NBA itself. It's the oldest Players Association. They'd allowed the league to basically curate their property for decades. But as they became closer to the fans directly through social media, through gaming, through just general interactivity, they decided it was better to have a separate entity of their own where they could just better curate that process. And I think you'll see a lot of that happening as sports goes on. Individual players, player associations, teams, even down to sponsor and event level, where they're doing as much as they can to make sure that the fans are getting what they want. Because the big thing with sports in particular, this is maybe where it differentiates from some of the linear entertainment, is you really are dealing with an expectation and this passion of what's happened in the past, and you're trying to deliver that to them again and really kind of satisfy people's needs. It's a bit different where, in the story world of fiction, it's more about building and surprising and kind of constantly adding to the storyline and expanding the world. Sports very different. Sports is very succinct. It's very much structured, and advancements as the future goes on technologically are going to be massive, but the game's going to be the same. So I don't know, maybe we'll have robots on field at some point. But
well, that's what you're here to tell us now, John.
Oh, that's
Are
right.
we gonna have robots?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Yes, and I would love to. Yeah, go ahead.
So with things like digital avatars and deep fakes and so on, I mean, the ability to run a fantasy football team and then actually bring in those real players and actually play real games against each other in a FIFA engine, but you've actually got, I mean,
there we go.
that kind of stuff.
There we go.
You know, there's money for everybody in there and real entertainment for the people who want to play that stuff, right? You know,
perfect. There we go. I was just gonna say that I really want to like see how we can bring those two worlds together, even though like right now, you know, it seems like that they're not connected, but they are. They have just Louis described it perfectly. That's one way of doing that. So I have one more question to Alexey here, and then we have a couple of questions there. I saw Houston started typing, but I actually want to ask it on screen. So make sure
I'll delete the answer.
You don't have to delete it. You can copy it for yourself in case we don't get to it. But I want to make sure that we actually ask those on screen. So hopefully we're doing fine for time right now. I haven't. I think we started a little later, so hopefully we still have a few minutes. But I want to make sure we get to Alexey. So I'm going to switch gears again because we haven't talked about one of the industries or one of the you know, shall I say, one of the mediums that were the previous hype train before NFTs have arrived and swooped that the hype train away from VR. But of course, a few years ago, it really was VR, and I think there's many of us, myself included, who is still very, very excited about the medium and the platform. Now, your studio develops for multiple platforms, not just the AR and VR, and you talked about their streaming interactions, which was very interesting. Maybe we'll get to that, but I'd really be remiss to have a panel about the future of interactive entertainment if we didn't talk about this, you know, about immersive platforms in particular, and that's, you know, XR or MR or however you you know, mixed reality or extended reality, whatever is your fancy for definition, right? So of course, when the DK1 came out back in 2013, you know, it was very, very exciting. Those of us who tried it, myself included, we were like, okay, this is great, I'm sold. When do I get my parcel in the matrix, right? Like, I just wanna when do I get my little when do I get to when do I get to eat my little virtual steak there? But how do you see it, you know, yourself as a developer? How much closer are we to that vision today, and then how about 20 years from now? Are we getting there is what I'm asking. Ready Player when is what I want to know.
Okay. Now, I actually want to add to Louis when he mentioned that you can create your own team using FIFA Engine just in VR, and this is probably the best definition of what's happening in 20 years. So yeah, indeed, we're facing probably 5th or 6th generation of VR coming. So we have like it was a long way. It had a lot of hype and ups and downs, and people just get very careful on what's going on. But the install base is actually finally get there. There's a few projects that generated more than 1 million copies, so there is the audience, and unfortunately still missing new content. Like as a user, I'm checking the store, and it's still not enough, and we have chicken egg situation again. But it's getting there. So yesterday we have Vive announced new headsets with a higher resolution and with a higher frame rate. So I understand why it's happening. Participating in launches from last decade on every major platform, we see how the hardware evolved and how development tool evolves, and pretty much the same rules apply. I don't know if they made it intentionally or not, but it's pretty much the same approach for the VR as well. So it's getting not immediately all feature headset full of everything. They're just getting updating slowly, and it's kind of bad for an end user. But I think they're targeting just fans and early adopters, so they get the best headsets. So what I'm missing for VR, we need better content. In terms of metaverse and Matrix and everyone, Ready Player One, and you get everything. I personally think that's not a few companies able to do that, and actually waiting there, and actually Epic open it for add VR support for Fortnite and allow users to make own games. I think they'll be exploding. Because for metaverse, you need a huge audience first. Yeah, I see a lot of attempts to make a metaverse based on IP or just creating new IP. like I don't believe. I mean, even Oculus trying to make their own metaverse, social interactive system. We had to try. It's great, absolutely great, but I'm not sure. It's still limited. So in terms of like metaverse, probably Fortnite's next step. I'm not talking about like 20 years old, but probably next step by step. It's probably the best approach. I Roblox as well. Maybe some Lego games. It was an attempt with Second Life.
Right.
Yeah. It's still there.
So I hope Tim Sweeney is listening right here. This is it, adding VR to Fortnite. Here we go. Okay, so we have a few minutes, so I want to make sure that we get to the questions. We have a couple of questions here. It looks like one for Luis and one I think for Houston, and then for those if you still have some questions, maybe we can still fit it in. But let's go quickly. So the first one by anonymous attendee. Here we go. I was surprised to see that so much of the new Fast and Furious film is practical. There are real cars there being flipped up with springs. Those virtual VFX effects we see in Mandalorian are great, but will we see a reaction against all the digital effects with a desire by audiences to see physical action again? Okay.
I don't think it will go in either direction, really. I think if a filmmaker makes a good project and they show the thing right on screen, nobody cares and nobody really notices. The people who are real fans of practical effects are mostly filmmakers who just go, wow, how did you do that? And also when they have a certain look about them. You know, we love practical effects that are retro and that look old school. And actually I can see that somebody's going to go and create something that looks like the original Terminator movie that's got a kind of Rick Baker or Stan Winston effects, and you'll find out the whole bloody thing was done in Unreal, you know. So I think it still comes down. I think that, as Houston said, the most important thing with any of the visuals that we produce, anything that put in front of people, is the story. At the end of the day, you know, even if I've edited it all and, you know, again taken all those Legos and made my own creation out of it, you know, did I enjoy the tale? So interesting question, but I don't think it's going to make a lot of difference.
And that's a very, very good point. Also, I think about touching on the democratization of creation, that now when the technical barriers are going to be removed, what remains is the story. Like you said, Houston, what remains is the creator's talent and ability to capture your imagination with the story and the characters. Right. So we then we have, I think, probably the last question here from Molly. What do you think teams developing IPs today make sure they do to future-proof their property? What do you think, I guess, they should do? Specifically things that may not have been needed possible in the past.
Sure. I mean, I think, you know, one great question. I think it's hard to know. Obviously, we don't. None of us have crystal balls. None of us are Nostradamus, right? So I think in an era of, which is unfortunate for a panel like this, but in an era of uncertainty and volatility, I think you have to double down on the thing has always worked in human history, which is a great story world that captures the human heart, captures the human imagination. When you have that, I think you have the asset that can become malleable, but the requirement, I think, is more mindset of the creator. I think you have to be curious, you have to be forward thinking, you have to explode the box that you put yourself in, and just like, I'm just a filmmaker, I'm just a game developer, I'm just this. You now have to think of yourself as a hyphenate or a polymath, and be always learning new things. You have to listen to the audience, actually honestly engage with your community. See what they're talking about, see what the trends are, anticipate things. You know, Gretzky always said you have to skate to where the puck's going to be, not where the puck is, right? We have to have that mentality as creators, I think, to be liquid enough to move forward. And just one last thing I want to throw in, you know, what's so interesting, I think, right now with when you see Travis Scott doing concerts in Fortnite, right? We're seeing this collision of music and gaming. I think there's a lot of interesting things about when we have sports events inside Fortnite. What happens, you know, the NFL is going to Mexico City. What happens when the NFL goes to Fortnite to have a game inside Fortnite? Lots of cool things. And just a little, one thing I'd love to talk to John about, just the reemergence of sport card, like digital sports cards, and the collectible aspect of it, especially as NFTs. what a major opportunity those are. So anyway, I just shoved in a couple extra things in there, just for bonus.
Just for good measure.
I actually want to add about, not about IP, but about platform, because when you're creating the game now, you have no idea what kind of platform you get in 5-10 years. And it's always opportunity. And this is what my team, I spent 10 years that training my team, like, we're ready. They not even asking, is it coming to us as a platform? Like, they know it's coming. So we need to choose cross-platform tools or as much as we can. I had a few cases that we just switch platform. It sells like 10 times more than in the platform we created originally, just because of right time or maybe right audience or just an opportunity for the genre. So we don't know. It's you always need to know that and ready for different platforms. So you cannot live in just one platform nowadays. Just it's not.
Sure.
So the future is cross everything, cross IP, cross platform, be holistic, and okay, perfect.
Amen.
Amen. All right. Well, I think, and this is it. We've solved it. So I think that with that, we are done. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your thoughts today.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Hopefully we are on time, Sophia.
Yeah, absolutely fine. No worries at all. Thank you so much to everyone. A really fascinating panel. And yeah, thank you. And to everyone who's been leaving questions as well, thank you all so much for participating and being a part of all the talk.